Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 54. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. Thank you so much for listening. When we grab fast food, we're accustomed to hearing this.
How may I help you?
We don't think twice when we're sharing what we want. Doesn't seem like a tall order to even share it. We're accustomed to sharing what we want. We can even do it in a crowd full of people. But what happens when we need support? How do we take charge? And I want you to think about placing a different order. Some of the ways that you can ask for help. Let's talk about 4 tips to effectively ask for help. And to help us do just that is Jeffrey Davis. He shares these 4 tips in Psychology Today. Davis is a consultant and author. He shares how we ask is important. So why is it even hard for us to ask for help? Davis says it's fear. Fear. He shares that the ask can carry high social risk, rejection, vulnerability, or even relinquishing control. Does that sound familiar? He recommends these 4 tips to effectively ask for help. So let's start to talk about what they are. We're going to start off with number 1. He says, be concise and specific. He recommends communicating clearly with concision and try not to over-explain. Simply just describe the task. Number 2, don't apologize. He recommends that it's not really anything for you to be ashamed of, right? Although sometimes we may feel that way. It's nothing to be ashamed of. So don't minimize your need. Does that sound familiar, right? Like things like, I hate to ask. My hands are up on that one. I have said that. Like, I hate to ask you, or I hate to ask this. I really do resemble that remark. But I have to say this when I'm working in a culture where I know there's a lot put on people and their plates. You can't help but to sometimes think about, oh, am I adding to their plate? But he's absolutely right. Because in many cases, when you're asking for someone within your circle, they're more than willing to help out, to really try to serve. So I love what Davis is saying. Don't apologize, right? There's nothing to be ashamed of. So here's number 3. Make it personal, not transactional. Make it personal, not transactional. Now, you may want to pause before typing your next email or text, because Davis says avoid it. Yes, avoid it. Try for face-to-face interaction or even a call. And research supports it. A study by researchers from the University of Waterloo and Cornell, in their study, Ask in Person, You're Less Persuasive Than You Think, over email, found that an email is less persuasive and that participants were 34 more times likely to comply. 34 more times likely to comply to face versus an email. So think about that the next time, right? That you're thinking about doing the ask and scheduling maybe a face-to-face, maybe taking the person out for coffee, or maybe, having a virtual conference or meeting, or hangout, however, which way you want to brand it, or just picking up the phone, and hearing their voice and being able to grant the ask. So Davis says, yes, avoid it via email. At least you want to try to avoid it via email, right? But the researchers have found that is more effective, much more effective, to ask face to face. So number 4, last but not least, he says follow up with results. Davis suggests this is beyond just expressing gratitude, right? So he recommends following up with, he refers to the helper, to share tangible results of their assistance. And it allows the person who is helping to see how their generosity has served the individual, which really does say a lot, right? Because when I help individuals, I always love hearing if it helped out, if it really served them. And so I can see that. I can see a value to that. And following up with those results, right, can allow the helper to really feel, some of those positive emotions in regards to, wow, whew, I'm so happy that I was able to help. I was so happy that I was able to serve in that capacity. So the next time you need help, these are some tips for you to think about that Davis highly recommends. You'll find his article in our show notes for this episode. And I will say this, I also highly recommend practicing some self-compassion along the way. So when my mom died a few years ago, my 3rd week on a new job at a university, my coworkers approached me and offered their help. They were incredible. I will admit, they were so incredible. But I have to admit something. I don't recall taking them up on the offer. Right. And I look back on that. I go, wow, that's interesting. I think there was a variety of different reasons, right? I'm starting a new job, and I certainly want to make sure everyone knows that I'm a team player. But I mean, I just suffered a loss. I suffered a loss. And they were just being incredible coworkers. To this day, I look back on it so fondly. Even when I resigned to take another job at a university to be closer to my fiance, I recall sharing how grateful I was for all their support during that time, because they really didn't even know me yet, right? I just started, but it didn't matter. They showed me that I was a part of the team by offering to help. So that was the old Kortni. That will admit, I didn't, I didn't allow them to help me. This new Kortni, this new Dr. Kortni is very different. So just a few weeks ago, my fiance offered to help me. I commute, I'm not sure if I mentioned this on the podcast yet, but I commute 2 hours, about 2 hours one way to work, 2 hours one way. What I do for love, right? So my fiance and I are officially in the same state, living in the same home, and my commute to my job at the university is 2 hours one way. And so I recall, a couple of weeks ago, I was driving and Ken and I were talking, and he says, I want to drive you to work. Let me drive you to work. And he has said this to me for the longest time. Hey, let me know. I want to be able to drive you to work. I have days I can take off. I'll be happy to drive you to work. Well, the old Kortni, the old Kortni, the old Dr. Kortni that was at this other university in Georgia, whose mother died literally the third week on the job, whose coworkers were so amazingly kind and generous and compassionate and said, look, we'd love to be able to help you. That old Kortni, right, who didn't take them up on the opportunity or the offer. And well, that old Dr. Kortni has left the building. So that old Dr. Kortni would say, well, I can't say yes. I mean, come on, you can do it. It's a commute. You can do it. Guys, I am so grateful to say that the old Dr. Kortni doesn't make decisions for this new one. The old one does not make decisions for this new Dr. Kortni. So not only did I say yes, we had so much fun together. It was like, I jokingly told my students, I felt like it was take your fiance to work day. Because, it was just wonderful to have him there. But I also need to share this with you. Did I mention that he also offered to serve as a speaker in my class? So I already had a lesson all laid out. So he kind of served as we kind of co-taught together. And then at one point I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. I looked at him and I go, oh, how beautiful is this? My fiance is in my classroom because I am a professor of journalism and communication and so forth. And that day, my students got a gift too, because they had a chance to learn from an Emmy award-winning journalist who just happens to be the love of my life. So imagine how powerful that yes was. So I enjoyed it so much that I told Ken, I said, Ken, hey, we should do that again. And I looked back at it and I thought about the lesson in it. And it's interesting because I took part in another conference and I actually, was very vulnerable with the audience by sharing that with them because, to share that you accepted help, so just like asking help, there's a level of vulnerability, right? But accepting help can be extremely vulnerable. So I love that I accepted the help from my incredible fiance, Ken. I keep on saying that about him because he is. I love our partnership. I love how we're there for each other. I love how we support each other. And I love that he was so excited. Guys, he was so excited behind the wheel, driving me to work. He was so excited speaking to my class. Matter of fact, he brought his Emmy with us. So, which was really amazing. So he brought one of his Emmys because he has a couple. He brought one of his Emmys and he used that in the classroom, and students had a chance to take some selfies with his Emmy, and it was all about motivating them, and they loved it. They loved it. So if you are listening to this podcast right now, and if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling emotionally exhausted, if you're feeling that you have a lot on your plate, if you're feeling that you need a break, it's okay. It's okay. And as I'm telling you it's okay, I want you to think about practicing self-compassion, because self-compassion is what helped me say yes to Ken. Self-compassion helped me say yes to Ken, and it helped me feel so wonderful. That car ride didn't feel like the traditional or the ordinary, ride to work, because I was sharing it with him. Then on top of that, being able to work together on my lesson, and I mean, granted, we come from the same industry, so it was wonderful to bring him in, but it was just wonderful to have him there. And I noticed how safe I felt. in terms of the fact that his presence was there, the fact that he was there to help and to serve. And also the fact that, because sometimes I will admit, I can get a little tired close to the end of the day. And then, to drive 2 hours, in the morning or the start of the day and 2 hours at the end, it can be a little taxing. But what's so interesting is that I felt so, energized because he was there. And I think the power of yes made me feel very energized too. So practicing self-compassion helped me say yes. And I hope it helps you too. I also want to share something else. I have to give a shout out to one of my therapists, Dr. Jennifer Watson. She told me this when I was working on my PhD at the University of Florida. And I love, I always mention the value and the power of, therapists. I consider them part of my self-care squad. And I look back on what she shared so fondly. She says, you have to let people help you. And you also have to see how they show up for you. And I go, wow, really? Back then I'm just trying to get through the PhD program and working through all those dynamics. But now, as I look back, here I am, completed the PhD program and dealt with loss of a parent and all the other dynamics of life, and then finding love with my incredible partner and fiance, Ken. So as I look back on that, I go, wow, I see her point. You have to let people help you, people who, in your life help you. And you also have to see how they show up. And so seeing how Ken showed up, it just made my heart, it just made my heart bigger. And it's amazing when I look back on it, even though I fondly look back on my coworkers in Georgia who were just showing up, in regards to, hey, look, we're here. If you need help, we're here. I'll cover your class, whatever you need, let me know. And I didn't take them up on that, but I just love still how they showed up by just offering to help, right? And so yeah, I have to give a shout out to my therapist on that, my former therapist, Dr. Watson, in regards to the value of help and allowing people to show up for you. So if you're like me, and at one point in your life, you've been so accustomed to carrying a very large load, right? I'm recovering from that as a happiness scholar. I'm the person who at one point thought, this again was the old Kortni, right? The old Dr. Kortni. The old Dr. Kortni thought, I don't need anyone to really help me move out of an apartment. Yes, I just said that out loud. So when I was working on my PhD, and I was in the process of moving out of my apartment. And let me also just give context in the fact that, my mother was gravely ill. My dad was the caregiver, and took care of her. And so there was quite a few things going on within the family structure, right, in regards to a family member being gravely ill, and then me going through a competitive PhD program. And the list kind of goes on as it relates to it. And so I thought, I can move out of this apartment by myself. I mean, I moved in by myself. I did. I left my parents' home. I drove 5 hours to Gainesville, and I literally unpacked my car. Luckily, at the University of Florida, they have this beautiful, beautiful complex in Gainesville downtown called the Continuum, where I used to live. And it is fully furnished. So literally all I needed was to bring my, few things. I didn't have to bring furniture or anything like that. And it was a complex with just graduate students. And so it was just PhDs and law students and medical students. And so I thought, hey, I moved in by myself. I should be able to do this. Well, Yeah. But Courtney, you have lived here now for almost 4 years and you started accumulating some things. And I did. I accumulated a lot of things. And I will admit, I was that person. So I don't need anyone to help. I moved in by myself. I could be able to move out by myself. And at this point, I moved in, I didn't know anyone. But at this point, by the time I moved out, I was surrounded by people. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. And so many friends offered, hey, I'll help you move. Let me know. Well, eventually, after what felt like, I don't know, a million trips to and from the complex to my car, yes, I called for help. I called for help. And guess what? My girlfriends, who I am so fortunate to have met when I was living in Florida, and they were also working on their PhDs at the University of Florida. They showed up and they supported me. It was wonderful. So asking for help, giving yourself permission to accept help, it is so freeing. The African proverb says it best. Let me say that one more time. The African proverb says it best. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let me say it again. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I hope you lean on your tribe. I hope this podcast gives you courage to ask for help. I hope you practice self-compassion, because it is hard to change things that you've been accustomed to doing most of your life. But practicing self-compassion will help you along the way. And also remember this, I'm cheering you on every step of the way. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Be kind to yourself. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.